I don't like the in-full weirdness of a lack of structure that is all my kids.
So where did you go? Where was it?
Well, we went down south. We went back Bristol, where I'm from. And, yeah. I mean, my parents are my parents, so they're lovely people, but wouldn't want to spend my life with them, innit?
Hey, Ellie, you okay? You good?
Thanks, yeah, how are you?
Not bad, thank you. Ben, you good?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Henry, they are awesome, mate. They look fantastic. Thank you. Okay, it's a cup of teas.
Take care of you, right?
Has Ellie got one?
Here are you.
Thank you very much.
I did Heartwell, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to our UA92 webinar, all about health and thinking about how we can look at developing health and well-being through sport and some of our offerings here. So it's a real privilege to be joined in this Stick to Health webinar with two friends of ours. So we've got Ellie and we've got Ben. So Ellie, would you just tell us a little bit about you, your sports endeavours, what really interests you about sport and health?
Yeah, so I'm the current captain of the women's team at Lancashire, and in my spare time I'm a trainee sports psychologist as well. So yeah, I grew up playing both cricket and football, played cricket for Lancashire from the age of 9, and played football for Liverpool as well from the age of 9 to 18. And yeah, currently a professional cricketer.
Wow. And Ben?
Yeah, so I work in the public health team at Trafford Council. I guess I'm like almost the opposite end of the spectrum from Ellie. Like I grew up, couldn't stand PE when I was a kid. I was terrible, couldn't throw a ball for nothing. And I suppose my interest is more like, it's less sport and more physical activity. It's how we broaden that offer out into the whole population and ensure that everyone feels able to move in whatever way they want to, really.
So it's pretty cool, and we've got people who are interested in both sides, recognise psychology, it's got application everywhere, hasn't it, really? So if we think about that then, Ellie, just talk to me about your role. How do you use psychology in a sporting setting? Obviously, you're an elite athlete and you're training to become a practitioner, support people, particularly in psychology. So how does it work for you? Think about cricket.
I think, like, for me, like a lot of the sports psych training I've done has massively helped me in my own career. I think it's something I sort of fell into studying, really. I'd never studied psychology before. At the time, like, women's cricket wasn't professional, so in order to train, I needed to go to Loughborough University. Completely messed my A-levels up because I was never in college, and then didn't get the grades to go to Loughborough unless I did a psychology degree, so sort of fell into studying it, really. And yeah, just like was really interested in it. And at the time, I thought, if I come out with a degree after this, then bonus. But I actually really enjoyed studying it. And yeah, it's been really sort of applicable to my own career, and I've really enjoyed sort of as a practitioner away from cricket, like working with a range of different athletes from different sports, different backgrounds, and yeah, trying to help them become better within their own sport, really.
Okay. And then think about that other end of the spectrum. You know, Ben, you mentioned you're not that sporty. What's it mean to you? How do you use psychology and getting people more physically active and healthy, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of it as, like, I'm not a psychologist, so I have to say, cards on the table, I don't know half of what I think about this area, but I think it's just that thing about meeting people where they start from, right? So I know the system talks a lot about physical literacy, and when I was a kid, the way I understood that term, what I thought physical literacy meant was more about, like, do you have the skills required? Like, what are the component skills of playing cricket or the component skills of playing football? But increasingly now, I think we use physical literacy to talk about that, like, that emotional connection that you have with movement. Like, what does movement mean to you? And when you hear sport, are you an Ellie who goes, yeah, let me at it, I'm ready to go? Or are you one of me that goes, can I just hide under the duvet for another 2 months? It's that thing about background, isn't it? Like, what are people's experiences with sport and movement, and are those positive experiences? Have they been negative experiences, and how can we support those people to turn that round, really? Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's about understanding the individual and understanding that people have got different backgrounds, and I'm sure, Ellie, you'll see that. You've got different sports people who are motivated by different things, and different factors influence their confidence and the like, and then equally, if we think about getting people more physically active, some people are more motivated by, a incentive, getting a reward, or a app that tracks how much they're doing. So there's all sorts of different bits, and it's very much holistic. And I guess what we probably all agree on, depending on what background we come from, is that psychology is about linking thoughts, what we call cognitions, and the physical together into this holistic package. And I mean, Ben, you already spoke about well-being there, didn't you? But Ellie, what's your take on well-being, particularly from a sporting perspective?
I think my perspective on well-being's probably changed over the years. I think like when I was younger, like all I wanted to do was play sport, and that was my life. And I think one thing I've learned over the years is that actually like balance in my life is massive for me to be able to do cricket well. So previously, when everything was about cricket, my cricket was suffering because I put way too much pressure on myself, and that probably includes a lot of the psychology stuff I study now. And yeah, everything was about sport, whereas now I've got a bit older and my career's progressed, I've realised there's more to life than sport, and it's given me quite a big perspective on what health and well-being looks like. And for me, that's not just sport, it's what life outside of sport looks like, and there's many different components like to that. And yeah, I definitely think I've given that more attention as I've got older.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sort of when I started out, I was working with individual athletes. I'd work with Ben to make him better. I'd work with Ellie to make you better at batting. But I think now it's much more think about how that system links together a little bit, and how you might work with a coach or might work with a psychologist or a nutritionist, and then taking that from sport, but thinking in health, well-being. We still need to adopt systems-based approaches. We can't look at talking to someone and motivating that person per se, can we? It's all about how can we look at the whole system, and you might not actually speak to that individual that you're trying to help, but you're creating an environment and creating things around them to get them more physically active.
Yeah, completely. And yeah, so the psychology and the motivation is one thing, isn't it? But when you're talking about people and starting them off on a journey, there's definitely a big thing there about scaffolding, right? Like the people who feel enthusiastic about this, there will be a whole bundle of stuff that supported us in our journey up until that point, like having access to the facilities, having access to the role models or the team that was the thing that fed us and got us into it, right? And yeah, a whole bundle of what public health does is about looking at the environment, how can we change the environment that we live in so that movement, walking, cycling, whatever it might be, is actually part of our daily life. Particularly now that, a lot of the working age population are now, there's a sizable chunk who are working from home and therefore moving less. So, how do we work on that?
I suppose that's about instilling it from a very early age as well, and thinking about how we can work with children who people might typically look at as being fit, well and healthy. You just mentioned the older population, but how do we instill those healthy habits early on as well? And one of the things that we do at UA92, we look at how we could go into schools and work with these young people directly as well to bring about these changes. And some of our students really get involved with that, which is really good as well. So just as well, so some really nice points there from a public health perspective and also an elite sport perspective. But just to the guys who are watching at home, if you do have any questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat and we'll try and sort of address those as we go through it as well. Okay, so moving on, thinking about this systems-based approach, this holistic approach, maybe if both of you could just talk about how you might work in a bigger team and the different roles within those teams. So Ellie, coming to you first, obviously you're an elite sports person and also you're working to become a psychologist. You don't do it on your own though, so who's around you? How does that help you?
I think, firstly, away from sport, I think it's massive to have a really good support network around you. I think for me, that's my family. So mum, dad, older brother, who's the reason I got into sport, they're massive for me, and they help me to sort of deal with the mental challenges of being an elite athlete as well. I think some people might think I've got it all figured out because I'm trying to be a sports psychologist, but I definitely haven't. And yeah, they're huge for me to sort of to use. And then within sport, obviously, there's so many different components to being an athlete. There's a huge team around us that help us to try and be the best version of ourselves. And you spoke about being holistic, that looks quite different for each player. So the sports science team we've got are amazing. And I think the work they're doing in the space of female athletes in particular is huge. I think a lot of the research has been done in male athletes, and it's only until recent years that actually they're figuring out that for female athletes it looks pretty different. So yeah, I think Lancashire are leading the way in that as well, which is really exciting. So we've got a number of different physios, like a female doctor who's massively into like the female health side of things. Obviously our cricket coaches, which like for me, I've got a one-to-one batting coach, a one-to-one wicket-keeping coach. There's a specialist fielding coach. So every sort of department of all the things that involve being a professional athlete, there's probably a person that looks after that, and they sort of work as a multidisciplinary team to sort of get that everyone on the same page with that. And psychology is also a huge part of that. So
I mean, that's so important, isn't it? Because that multidisciplinary working, think about sport and exercise science, and obviously being a sports scientist is a role in its own right now. And within that, you've got different strands. You could be a nutritionist, you could be a strength conditioning coach. And so we'd really try and push that through our degrees here. So we've got a degree program called Sport and Exercise Science, whereby you think about working in that multidisciplinary team. So it might not be that you are being trained to become this profession, but rather you're being trained in this role, that'll be your expertise, but how can you work with these different people as well, just to give you that MDT perspective, that multidisciplinary working. And Ben, what about you? Very different sort of world of work, but what does it look like for you? What's that ecosystem like for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, well, my team, hands down, is the best team I've worked in ever. And I don't have experience of sports teams, I suppose, so I don't know. Maybe you're all as fab as we are. Shout out Trafford Public Health Team if you're watching, which they won't be because I haven't told them I'm here. I think with my team, I mean, we've all got our specialist areas and we've all got our work that we do. So the whole team is there to work to, prevent health problems for our residents, and particularly to think about health inequalities, right? So the differences in health outcomes that different populations experience. Like you talked about women and the lack of research around women in sport and things like that. That's classic, right? Demographics, deprivation, age, race, all of that kind of stuff. I think the thing I'm very conscious of in my team, so there's the support network bit you talked about as well. So definitely it's a very open team. We all feel like we can talk to one another, and that's quite important. But I think the other thing is it's the diversity. It's the diversity of thought. There's a lot of different working styles in the team. So there's quite a lot of my colleagues who are really thorough. They like working through the data and knowing the answer, like hands down, and being really rock solid in whatever conclusion they've reached. And I'm not that. Let's try and not call myself an utter mess. No, I am driven more by like urgency, right? So I like to look at a couple of papers quickly and go, oh, well, I probably know the answer. And then my colleague over there is going to gently pull me back and be like, well, do you really know? And should we go and look at the other papers as well, right? So yeah, I think diversity of perspectives is really important.
I guess it's think about how those kind of link with student journeys as well, because you've mentioned there you've got a very different way of working compared to some of your colleagues, but how we can see these different perspectives, value these different perspectives is really important as well. So, think about people who might go and work in a similar sector to you. We've got our health, exercise and sport program, and through that, students can specialise again, but how can we see solutions where other people can't? How can we tap into these different opportunities? How can we be open-minded and try and find a solution whereby we've previously missed them and not seen them? And sometimes these differences in approaches really help us out with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how important it is, but I think one of the things that helps from a possibly psychological perspective is that place of safety, right? Is that if you feel safe and secure, and this would probably apply in sport as well, right? If you feel safe and secure, and if someone's massively outperforming you, let's say, in traditional perspective, like if you see someone who's batting way better than you are, if you feel safe and secure, and if your sport network's solid, then you can look at that and be like, well, this is fine. They're a teammate, and what can I learn from that? As opposed to if you are not in the best place from a well-being perspective, then you see someone outplaying you and you go to pieces, maybe, I don't know.
So how's that work for you? Because you probably been on both sides. You've probably been the person who's being pressured for that spot, or maybe if your strike rate's falling off, and you've probably also been the person that's been trying to big people up and give them that confidence. So how's it like from those two perspectives?
Yeah, it's definitely probably one of the biggest challenges I've had as a leader, as a captain. I think like when you're not performing, it's pretty hard to sit there in a dressing room and be a leader. But at the same time, like cricket is a bit of a weird sport where it's a team sport, but there's a lot of individual pieces to it. So it's about, always just trying to bring it back to the team. And that's something we often talk about is like, yes, it's great to go out and score 100, but should you have gone on and got 120 to win the team the game, like it's always about the team. And that can be really difficult because, like I said, it's a really individual sport. Like when you've got the ball in your hand and you're a bowler, you're on your own. When you're out there batting, there's only someone at the other end and everyone else is sat watching. So it is just trying to keep bringing it back to the team as much as possible. And I think that's where I think we get that pretty right at Lancashire. And like we're all on the same page about trying to win trophies. And like sometimes someone's little contributions, if someone goes and gets 20 off 10 balls, actually that's going to win us a game just as much as someone going out and scoring 100 is. So I think it's about like rewarding your teammates as well. And people often say like cricket sets you up to fail sometimes, and you have a lot more bad days than you do good. So as much as it makes you feel terrible when you've had a bad day, your mate's had a really good day, and your good day will come at some other point, and you want your mates to be happy for you when that time comes. So actually celebrating your teammates' success is huge.
So it's about that environment again. And how would a coach look to create that environment?
I think that's something that he's brought in. I think he's been amazing at like valuing contributions, however big or small they are, and sometimes little contributions are what gets us over the line to win a game. Sometimes a period of 5 overs might win us the game, and you've played from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 p.m, but actually that 5 overs that somebody bowled has won us the game. So it's about, yes, rewarding the big things, but also rewarding the little things and making sure that everyone else does that as well. And that's what creates like that team element. And one of our values as a group is being team first. And I think that's so big when you play a team sport.
So I guess it's that coach-athlete relationship, recognising all the small bits that result in that big part, dealing with the issues as they arise. And I think that's something that's often overlooked in coaching. From my perspective, put a psychology hat back on, it's people think coaching is teaching people skills and teach people to bat better, bowl better, but it's thinking about how we can actually coach and sort of make the environment better and change the environment. And that's one of the real things that we offer here in our coaching degree, that it's not purely teaching technical skills, but it's think about how psychology at its broadest sense can create that safe environment. You know, Ben, you talk about the safety of the environment, how we can create that to allow people to find their own place in the team, to really flourish and grow.
Yeah, I think people often say like the coaches are the best psychologists. And I think that's so true. Like quite often people think about like the technical aspects of the game, and they've had a bad day, so they get back in the nets and train harder. And yes, that's an element to it. But sometimes you learn just as much by having a 5-minute conversation with a coach or going for a coffee with a coach, and actually like that communication element, like from a psychology point of view, is huge.
Yeah. So thinking about that from a sort of public health perspective, what levels would you work with persons? So we spoke very much about the environment in a sport environment and creating that safe space. We spoke about work with the individual and having those one-to-one coffee chats. Do we see the same things in a broader health setting?
Well, so I suppose what we do as public health, our lens is the population, right? So we don't personally work with people on a one-to-one level, but we commission lots of services that do work with people on a one-to-one level. We're by and large, we're looking at the data. So whatever the service might be, if it's working with people on, working to achieve a healthy weight, if it's oral health. So one of my services is all about just basically getting kids to brush their teeth, which, I wish my kids would brush their teeth properly. I don't know how they do it. So it's a combination of all of it, I guess, right? So we look at that. There are services that we commission which are very much psychology led. again, with some of the groups that we're working with and some of their needs, from a psychology perspective, some of that really needs to be trauma informed, because a lot of these health problems kind of start there, right? But it's also, we've also got an eye on the wider environment and how that interacts with the individual choices that are being made in the environment. And really, it kind of depends on the health issue that we're talking about as to where we focus. With movement, with physical activity. So, we've got services around the borough that are there. We operate things like a physical activity referral scheme, which is where, if there are individuals who are not moving as much as they'd like to, if healthcare professionals decide they benefit from it, we refer them through. And depending on where they're at, it's on a very basic level, it's just kind of hand-holding and support from qualified professionals who know about, motivation and psychology, and who also know about managing risk. A lot of these people are very capable of moving, but they don't feel like it, or they don't feel like they are. So there's movement services. But then on the other hand, I'm also sort of working with the highways team on how we change the way we manage our road and pavement network to try and nudge more of our population towards more movement from a transport perspective now, which is a whole other area in itself.
So we said nudge there. We think about motivation and think about how people might have different motives. How do we tap into people who might not know the need to do something, for instance? I can imagine that's probably a big part of your role. You might have someone who's not physically active, but they might not know what or how they need to be getting more physically active.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When we get onto transport, that's the bit where I'm less psychology and less empathetic. Like, I tend to get a bit ranty when we get onto transport. But my focus in transport tends to be less about whether people want to and more about creating the environment where it's the easiest choice, right? We live in an environment where, compared to some other parts of the world that we might all think of, this environment does not favour walking and cycling, right? For a whole range of reasons, we have ended up with communities where driving for lots of people is either the only viable option or it's the most convenient or whatever. But of course, every time we drive, we are not moving as much as we could, but we're also creating an environment where walking and cycling becomes less safe for the people who are not driving, right? It's fascinating and it's complicated, and we can't cover it now. But I think there's an interesting thing about having the conversation as a wider group of people, right? Like, the public conversation about transport is not as well informed as I'd like to be. And yeah.
But I guess a lot of that's actually recognising it. You said sort of broach the conversation, but maybe people don't recognise that. Maybe people tend to, probably like myself and like you, Ellie, come with very much a sporting perspective. I think, I enjoy sport, I'm going to do it. So sometimes we don't necessarily see the perspective of other people. And I think one of the things we do need to do is get people who work in these industries to open their eyes to what the world looks like for other people. And that's kind of what we try and do through our sport and exercise science program, thinking about how we promote exercise psychology. To the point in which, the projects working on, you'll be well aware of some of these, where we might ask students to go and walk down a particular area and think, this is what it looks like to these people. Flipping heck, I'm in their shoes now. How can I make that work? How can I make that a better place? And just open people's eyes to different people's sort of views of things. And I guess it's that mindset, isn't it, that we need to shift to create the first steps towards getting people to engage in active travel. So what sort of strategies have you been involved in to try and promote that active travel?
So I have to think carefully about the ones I can talk about now as well, because some of them are a bit more controversial, and I'm still part of the council, am I? Part of it is about the infrastructure, right? So we don't have safe, protected routes for people to cycle all around borough currently. So part of what our colleagues in highways do is they design new schemes. The The funding for such schemes comes from Greater Manchester, from the Mayor's Challenge Fund, and we install where we can, and the money's never enough, but we install where we can new cycle routes. So there's some that have recently gone on along Talbot Road. There's work currently ongoing on the A56, which then, once that work's completed, will give us a safe, protected route away from the road and the traffic for people to ride all the way from Stretford Mall, a bit further south, all the way into the centre of Manchester. So when you talk to people and when you ask people why they don't like active travel, one of the most popular responses is around safety. So if you can provide that segregated space, that's one step along the journey. That there's a whole load of other scaffolding that needs to happen as well, right? There might be people out there who don't feel like they have the skills, who haven't ridden a bike for however long. There's retraining available at a Greater Manchester level. Some people may not have a bike. So there's things like, there's the Renew Hub, which is a recycling centre where we can access bikes at, refurbished bikes at next to no cost at all. So we can pass those on to communities in need. And then, like you referred earlier, there's joy as well, isn't there? There's fun. So, one of the things we did last year, which we are hoping to do again, is we commissioned some external providers to run a game in North Trafford, which they call Beat the Street. And I have to check generational reference points this next. Do you remember Pokemon Go either?
I remember Pokemon.
Yeah? Okay. We're all right. It's not like you're after that and you're right.
I think Pokemon still exists. It's still a thing.
Is it? So, the game was quite similar to Pokemon Go. You get a whole bunch of basically contactless card boxes that we went out and we strapped to lampposts all around North Trafford. You ship out a whole bunch of contactless cards to kids in primary schools. And every time they tap on 2 boxes and they've walked or cycled, so they measure how long it takes for the journey. And if it senses that you've been driving, then you don't get the points, right? If you walk or cycle, you get the points for every journey. We run the game over a month, and it's just fun competition, isn't it? And the kids love it. Turned out quite a few of the school staff got really competitive about it. But the interesting thing about it was that it changes people's relationship with the space in which they live. So it sort of gives people a bit of permission. Most of us, and I'm the worst at this, right? I've got my routes that I know. I have my home, I have my shops, I have my workplace. I don't tend to go off the beaten track much. I'm not an explorer. But what it did was it encouraged you to step beyond where your standard routes were and just go and have a bit more of a look around the neighbourhood. And it's fascinating, man. People move more, and some of the data says that actually by the end of the game, people trust their neighbours more and things like that. Really interesting, and it's just a game.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think thinking as well about the degrees that we offer here, physical education, people might think, okay, I want to be a PE teacher, but there's so many ways in which you can promote physical activity in that role. So it's not just about what you do in the classroom, but it's about how much input you can have. So it's, I guess, through degrees here and potentially work with people like yourself, it's how can we instill those additional opportunities through programs like the PE program and even through the health, exercise and sport program as well. Think about active travel and every opportunity to try and create active travel. But I guess thinking about how we work together, what I'm really interested in is how can people from a public health background maybe work with individuals from a sporting background, maybe higher education as well. How can we work together to get people to be more engaged in physical activity?
If we knew, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think it's a journey the whole sector's on anyway, right? So none of this is rocket science or anything. But for me, there's a thing about the terminology, which is a journey and a shift that's been happening, which is that we used to... Sport still has a meaning, but for wider community activity, we tend to talk less about sport, because sport's got a sort of embedded, for the kind of people that we're trying to work with and reach, it might already have negative connotations. And then, so we sort of moved away from that. And then we started talking about physical activity, but even that's a bit of jargon. And what the hell is that, right? And so GM Moving, the umbrella body across Greater Manchester, they talk about movement, right? Like it doesn't matter. You don't have to be playing sport or cricket or whatever it might be. If you're going down the road to a knitting group in your 60s, 70s, then that is movement and it's still helping you to stay well into older age. So I think there's just, it's just that empathy and that wider perspective, isn't it? It's I think a lot of people who work in the sector are already doing good work or already aware of it, but just making sure that wherever we can, we are widening that inclusion. When in sport, there's still a hell of a long way to go, but the leaps and bounds that we've made over the past, 10, 20 years, where historically, I don't think we were great at really affirming, like, this is an opportunity for women and girls, crack on, go and do what makes it, like, let's all move, right?
So, Ellie, from your side then, where do you see your role as a female elite athlete sort of bringing about and empowering people to get more physically active, whether that's engaging in sport or just being more active more generally?
Yeah, I think it's something we often talk about, and again, another one of our sort of team values is trying to inspire the next generation, and I think that's quite important for us in terms of like how we play our cricket on the pitch. We want to be inspiring, entertaining, but also how we behave off the pitch, and it's how you conduct yourself as an athlete. But I think if we can sort of pave the way for the next generation of female cricketers, then we're sort of doing the right thing. But I definitely think there's also scope for us to sort of inspire people to move more. I guess like a lot of us actually laugh about like when we're not at training, we don't actually do a lot. And like people talk about step count, this, that, and the other, and like, yes, we work hard when we're in, but then what we're doing away from here actually probably is quite static and quite not moving as much. And I think I've definitely found like huge benefits in just like getting outside and walking. And I think just like the more, like for me anyway, I hate being sat still, and the more I move, the better I feel. And I think like we spoke before about that holistic, what well-being looks like. That's so big for me as like a cricketer, and my cricket to go well is if my well-being's going well, and for my well-being to go well, there's a number of different things that like are dead simple, that like just going for a walk and getting a coffee, like things like that look after my mental well-being. And I've definitely found, probably since COVID actually, when walking was the only thing you could do, I've definitely found that that's like really helped me.
So again, think about the role of a coach. You know, the coach is working with you as an athlete, but how can they look after you and the team holistically to make sure that the well-being is taken care of? How are you getting strategies, one of which might be active travel, to give you that chance to shut off from a tricky game or a slump in form or something like that as well. So it's think about the broad role of the coach, again, is looking after athletes, players, if you like, away from the cricket pitch, away from the rugby pitch, away from wherever, and think about you as a person. So I guess it's how can we as an organisation educate the next round of coaches to be aware of that, aware of people as people rather than machine athletes, and we need to take care of individuals' well-being as well. And also it's seeing that connection, if you like, between we've got sport as a driver, which if used correctly can also impact people's sort of well-being, impact people's mood, and we see that come through really, really much in the sort of health, exercise and sport programme, where it's that combination really, seeing got sport, but how does sport serve as something which really does motivate health, well-being and so forth as well. Again, thinking about that holistic approach. So there's lots of different bits, and really what we see is these small nudges here and there, if used correctly, can really look to develop people we work with. So this thinking about sort of what we could do a little bit more of from a community perspective. How do you see sort of your role, Ben? What can we do more of? You know, we've already spoke about PE, and I spoke about the PE degree and some of the offers to our students to get involved. You know, some of those are potentially looking at things like school streets and active travel to school. But what do you think we should be doing? How can we sort of get people in the community to do more?
Well, you put me on the spot again. Money's always going to be an issue, isn't it? So I think there's something around, and we'd always say this, but I think partnership working and improving the partnership working is always feels like you can always do better, do more. So I suppose to take the example of Lancs cricket, so we have a relationship with the club, we have a relationship with the foundation, so the foundation does wellbeing walks every Wednesday, which go really well. That's one example of where, a professional body with a much wider reach than we do. If the Trafford Public Health team says you should move more, no one's going to do it. If Lancs fans see their role models really going for some of this stuff, then they'll join in. And you mentioned school streets there. So just to spell that out for anyone who's not aware, these are they're sort of increasingly there's a few more of them dotted around. They're quite popular in London. And very basically, a school street limits the car traffic around the school gates at pick up and drop off, right? So for a period of time when the kids are arriving, we just say that the road's closed to most cars, with some exceptions like obviously emergency vehicles. Any residents who are on the street can still have access and so on and so forth. But other than that, we close the road. So there's a very successful example nearby in Seymour Park. And one of the things that we're actually in discussion with yourselves around, and I think that's coming up later on, hopefully this year, is when you close that road, you then increase the available space to play, right? Again, this is not your generation, and it's not really my generation either, but when you talk to some older people, they remember when as kids, they used to just play out, right? Kids playing out. Why does it not happen anymore? It's difficult. There's a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is there's lots more cars on the road. It's not really, or we don't feel safe letting our kids play out. So when you've got a school street operating, you've got that space. We have a school street on our road, and we close it 3 days a week for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the afternoon. What doesn't yet happen, we don't yet have a structured way of using that space. But you could set up anything, and you could throw in an obstacle course, you could get people playing dodgeball up and down the field, I don't know, whatever it could be. There's something interesting about sort of reclaiming that space for kids and play. That's just an interesting opportunity, and it could be quite low cost, which I suppose is why we started with that before we build up to the stuff that's got a bigger price tag.
So that might be where we see coaching, we see sport and exercise science, we might see physical education and people who are aspiring PE teachers come into it and offer some of those strategies, those approaches, those games, and thinking maybe from a cricket perspective, Ellie, how can we bring cricket into the street? Something like throwing and catching could turn into something which could be useful there, maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's something that the foundation the Lancs Foundation are doing a lot of work on, is like just trying to make cricket accessible for everyone, and that doesn't need a pitch with stumps, 11 aside, hard ball. It can be, just as simple as throwing and catching and little movement drills. Like there's a lot of drills you can even do without a ball that like relate to cricket. So I think, just trying to make it accessible for everyone, and that doesn't require like a lot of kit or a lot of space.
I guess it's that accessibility, that application, and thinking about how we can equip some of our students with those skills, develop physical literacy. We might typically think about that translate into a coaching environment or a teaching environment, but think about developing health and a long-term physical activity. Maybe there's application there. Maybe we're now seeing that crossover, if done correctly, where we can take coaching, start to improve public health, and we're on to a bit of a winner, dare I say it. Okay. So again, really nice examples of things that we do cover in our degrees. Looking at developing active lifestyles through all our programs, thinking about the sport and exercise psychology, actually giving some of our students some of these problems, say, here's a case study, fix it. That can be quite eye-opening to ourselves as well. You might come up with the next Pokemon Go, for example, and there's another solution that Ben can call me old about. We're starting to see some sort of real synergies now where we can work together. So just wondering, in the background there, Meg, have we got any questions from the audience at all, or?
Genuinely, we've got like 5 questions.
Don't disappear anywhere. Okay, so we've got some questions.
If we can't answer them, are we fired?
Depends.
Okay,
Depends.
we'll find out.
So got a question here coming from the audience. So what's the difference between sport and exercise science and health, exercise and sport? So I'll take that one, because actually my role here, I do lead those programs as course leader. I think sport and exercise science, it's generally more working with athletes, looking at how we can improve sport performance. And probably health, exercise and sport is more looking at how we can improve the general health, well-being and fitness of the broader population, potentially identifying people who might not even recognise they need to develop their health. They might not know they need to improve their amount of exercise they do. So I guess we've got perfect gathering here. We've got Ben, who might be a perfect rep for health, exercise and sport. We've got Ellie, who might be a perfect example of someone who works in sport and exercise science. So I guess it depends on the people you might want to work with and where that reach goes, but not forgetting the connection between the two. And would you agree with that, guys? What do you think?
Well, it's your course. No.
Sounded good.
So I guess ultimately for me, is think about health, exercise and sport. It's having that broad impact. And, from that, yes, from a sport and exercise science perspective, you might be working with that team, might be creating the next round of champions. From a health, exercise and sport perspective, there's probably going to be big economic impact if we can get the population fitter and healthier.
Yeah, but I suppose also, I'm just very aware that from a public health perspective, we're a whole population, but there will be a whole bunch of students on that course where it's one-to-one, but it's more about curative or therapeutic one-to-one work, right? Like the work that physios do or whatever, that kind of idea, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, it's it's just thinking if we get people active, we know people are going to be healthier. There's going to be less cost on the NHS. People are going to be having longer, healthier, happier lives as well. So for me, there's a big thing there as well. And, just bouncing out of COVID a few years back, we still got a bit of work to do to get people more physically active because of all the benefits. So I've got a question here as well. I didn't do PE at A-level, but want to do coaching at UA92. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. So we don't necessarily stipulate what you enter with. If you start a degree at UA92, we'll work with everyone in that first year to get them up to that same level, and then we can look to specialise and progress from there. So, yeah, we do have details on our website of entry criteria relating to the sort of UCAS tariff. But even with those, if you might not be hitting the tariff exactly, we do have other options where you might want to look. So do please look at our website regarding the entry tariff there. But no, to answer this question, we don't look for any specific subject areas as an entry requirement. Another question here. So what kind of experience with industry will I get? So we've got students who work in industry, work in clubs. So might be working as a performance analyst, might be working as a strength conditioning coach in a club. But we've also got individuals who go into schools as well to get that hands-on experience working in school, whether that's delivering warm-ups as part of being a physical education teacher, or even think about how can we just more broadly get people more physically active, as we spoke about before. But also we've got individuals from our health, exercise and sport who are focusing on the nutrition strand of that particular programme, where they're actually going and developing nutrition workshops and actually going out into these schools as well. So it's not just a physical activity, but it's health through nutrition as well. So there's lots of different experience, and indeed, just working with you two wonderful people as well, hopefully it emphasises how we do work as this connected body. And a part of being at UA92 is recognise the impact we can have into the community as well. So I think we're nearly there. Just looking to my director in the background, we're nearly there. Okay. I've got another question.
Doing a great job, obviously.
So, if I study a sports course, do you focus on a particular sport in detail, or is it broader looking at a variety? That's a great question. So we don't focus on a particular sport. Obviously, we've got Ellie here representing cricket, but we've got students from a range of backgrounds, so anything from swimming to equestrian, so horse riding, archery. We've got students from a whole range of backgrounds who are with us. And really what we look to do through our degrees, we allow you to tailor the degree to yourself. So it might be that you're really interested in a particular sport. Well, let's look to see how you can maybe deliver a coaching session as part of your particular sport of choice. So how could you coach the sport you're interested in? So yes, we've got staff expertise in a variety of areas, but our programs are not specific to a particular sport as such. We allow them to work with different individuals and different opportunities as well. So thinking about that, obviously, Ellie, you mentioned you're from cricket, but you've also played in football, you're trained to become a psychologist. What would you say is a real key takeaway message there for that sporting background? Do you need a particular sport to focus on, or is a variety better? What's your take?
I think a variety is definitely better. I think I'm quite a big advocate for playing loads of different sports as a youngster. I think what I found through playing like multiple sports was that there was a lot of key sort of transferable skills. I think playing multiple sports made me a better athlete. Like transferable skills like teamwork, leadership, stuff like that I got from football that I could use through cricket. And as a sports psychologist, I think I've found it like really refreshing going into loads of different sports, and having that different experience has made me a better practitioner, because like you work with different people, different backgrounds, navigating different situations, and I think that the more the better, really. I
guess seeing that in the classroom as well, having a range of students from these different backgrounds as well, see the world from different perspectives as well. So certainly something I'd agree with. Try and get that broad range of different experiences, different challenges, different population groups to work with will certainly be something that I'd recommend as well. So, any more questions? I want to be a sports psychologist. Which course should I do? Okay. So, probably the best person to speak to, someone who's currently on that pathway.
So I never did it at A-level. Like I said before, sort of fell into studying it at uni. And in that first year, sort of, they caught everyone up to speed, if you like, and did a 4-year undergrad at Loughborough University in psychology. And then did a distance learning masters with Staffordshire Uni, which allowed me to sort of do it alongside my cricket. That was distance learning, and then specialised into sports psychology then. And then after that, there's a number of different routes you can go down. You can do a PhD. You can do a course called the Prof Doc, which I think John Moores do really well. And then you can do a qualification in sport and exercise psychology with the BPS, which is what I'm doing. Can do that over 2, 3 or 4 years. I'm doing it over 3 to allow me to sort of do it alongside my cricket. And that course is just doing loads of applied practice and building a big portfolio of work and sort of learning on the job, if you like, which is found really, really exciting.
So it's about getting that solid undergrad first, though, isn't it? Because the postgrad qualification can be a fairly long route, but it's about getting that undergraduate, that Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, that then puts you in that really good place. So for me, something like a sport and exercise science degree offers that range. Our health, exercise and sport, equally, potentially with more of a focus of going down the exercise psychology route, that could be really nice there. So basically, I think you'd need to do a postgraduate qualification, but all of our undergraduates do put us in a really nice position as well. So, good questions coming specifically for you, Ellie. So, as a pro athlete, how did you manage studies? How do you get that balance right?
I think there's obviously periods where it's not been easy, but I think for me the main thing was like that I'm pretty driven within myself, and those times where I had late nights, early mornings to get the work done and stuff like that. But I think like at one point I had no option other than to study, because being a professional cricketer wasn't an option for me. So I'm pretty grateful that was the scenario at the time. But yeah, I've just managed to sort of find a way to get into a routine, and I think that's massive with everything. Get into good habits, get into a routine, probably links to a lot of the stuff you do, right? Like, you get into a good habit, like you start walking every morning, then all of a sudden it becomes part of your routine and you don't even think about it. So for me, at the minute, I beat rush hour traffic in the morning, and I get here, sit in Cafe Nero across the road and do a couple of hours work every morning. At the start, it was difficult, but now it's not. I don't even think about doing it. I do it every day, and it doesn't even feel like I'm doing work, because it's part of my routine, if you like. So
I guess from a health and exercise perspective, that routine is key. So it's looking at how we can create that and push that with our students as well. But think about routine, something that you mentioned there, Ellie. Our particular way of teaching here, we all either teach in the morning or we teach in the afternoon as well. So you'd join us and you'd be either an AM student, so you'd be here with us 4 days a week from 9 till 1, or you'd be an afternoon student here from 2 till 6. So I guess in establishing that routine, these good habits, we know what we're doing. We know we can study in the morning, then that leaves a space for training in the afternoon or anything else that we're really interested in as well. Okay, so yeah, really, really nice there as well. Just think about how, I know the question was to you, Ellie, about how you managed it, but how organisations like us at UN92, how we can support you as well, and recognising that people do come with, different roles you might have. That might be a paid role, or it might be a sporting role as well. So how can we support you with that? Okay, so just going through my questions there. I think last one for you then, Ben, is thinking about your role and the people you work with. How might someone want to do a similar role with you, where they can have that big impact out in the community and improving the health of the population, dare I say it?
Well, my work history's been all over the place. So I guess my first line of advice would be don't decide too soon what you want to do, maybe. So in terms of public health, it's very broad discipline, and these kinds of roles, I think one of the things that we do quite well is that diversity. So there shouldn't be any barrier to getting started. Obviously, the passion is more important than anything else. So wanting to improve health outcomes for our population, for our people, that's the starting point. And if you're passionate about that, guaranteed you can find somewhere where you can do that work. Yeah, and I guess that's where our PE program, our coaching program, our sport and exercise science program, but particularly our health, exercise and sport program does offer that diverse range. So you can go and specialise in potentially a psychology-orientated role, maybe a nutrition role, or maybe something where you work as a health trainer as well and work on a one-to-one basis, getting people more physically active, or even thinking about something like policy. How can we work in local authority and look to shape and influence policy as well? So we do see all those come through in our programme as well. So hopefully you've really enjoyed our webinar here. Giving you a bit of an insight into what UN92 can offer. Think about our industry collaborations, whether that's from an elite sports perspective, our sort of health promotion perspective. But if this is something you're really interested in, potentially take a look at our website, look at the upcoming open days that we have, reach out to our team here, and hopefully we might hear from you soon. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that, and nice hearing from you. Thanks a lot.